Researchers are reporting that Merck knew about the problems years before it acted. Of course, Vioxx is no longer on the shelves. The stock is not getting killed here because it's not a huge surprise. Any news about Vioxx that comes out cannot possibly be a major surprise since there were 5,000-plus class action lawsuits against Merck. Merck won some of them, patients won some of them, and others were settled.
The best barometer of some of these stories is how the stock responds, and the stock really hasn't responded since we got news of this. That might mean that this is one of those stories that they just file away, say, we've heard it before, it may or may not be true, but again, it's not going to hurt the company as a whole right now because they've been through so many of these in the past.
So let's bring in our panel to talk about this. Guys, Merck is obviously a huge stock, a Dow component. If you bought when the Vioxx news hit it hardest a couple of years ago, you look like a genius today because the stock came up, Victoria Barrett. This has not destroyed Merck in any way, shape, or form. Does this news truly matter to people? And by the way, in the other box right here next to me, we're waiting for the Pope to arrive in the United States, his first papal trip for Pope Benedict and the first papal trip of all for since 9/11. So we just got that extra screen up for you in case the plane comes into view. But again, Victoria, what does this mean for Merck?
Well, it probably doesn't mean a lot for Merck right now for the reasons that you all have just cited, which is that this isn't a drug that the company still sells. It's troubling for the whole industry in the sense that this is an industry that depends on blockbuster drugs that are just by their nature risky to develop and risky to distribute. And if we get more regulation in this industry, which, you know, could come out of a report like this, that would be bad for these stocks. Would it be good for, you know, the drugs we take every day? Unclear. I mean, there are risks, and pharmaceuticals are getting more and more risky, more and more complex. We're starting to see targeted drugs based on your genes. All that stuff just increases the risks. It also helps people.
But Gary Kay, you know, a lot of the drug companies have become a little more hard line about whether to sit back and just settle these cases. In fact, Merck has been taking them on one at a time, and very often, more often than not, winning these cases. So is there a change of attitude? In the past, you used to just buy off these lawsuits. Now you take them head on.
Well, I don't think these companies have any choice. You know, if they start losing them one by one, it sets a bad precedent for the ones that come forward. Look, as far as this as a company, it's not good. You know, Merck's had a lot of black eyes over the last few years. And I have to tell you, as far as today's stock movement, I don't think it's that much of a big deal. That's because the stock has already dropped from 61 down to 40 over the last couple of months. I just think this is more of a black eye. You know, they're also being accused for ghost writing good news on it. This is, I think it'd probably not get two legs, but it's not good.
And guys, up on the screen we have the lower third. Moody's may cut Delta and Northwest Airlines. Of course, now they cut them again, once again. But Moody's is saying that Delta and Northwest need time to realize the synergies, and this is of critical concern for the debt rating, Peter.
So now we're going to the airlines?
You're switching to the airlines. Work with me, people. Work with me.
Well,
work with her.
The airlines are in trouble. All of them. They've been losing money for years. And the problem is Americans are too broke to fly. I mean, the planes are full because the prices are too low. The airlines are losing a ton of money. What has to happen, what will happen in the airline industry is massive consolidation. They're going to stop flying all these planes. They're going to cut back on their routes, cut back on all that traffic. And the price to fly is going to go sky high. And the result is going to be far fewer Americans are going to be flying in airplanes because we can't afford it anymore. We're broke. We've got too much debt. We're debasing our money. And so, you know, the Chinese are going to be flying. They're the ones that can afford the jet fuel.
Not everybody is broke, Peter. Not everybody's broke, okay?
Well, but
we're still alive.
The average American can't afford to fly at a price that will keep the airlines profitable. They have to downsize to reflect the reality of an America with a much reduced standard of living.
By the way, gang, we should mention that the Pope has just arrived, or his plane has just landed at Andrews Air Force Base. That was what you saw on the right-hand side of your screen there. So the Pope has arrived safely in the United States for what will be a historic meeting with President Bush. He's going to be in Washington and also come to New York, going to be speaking at Yankee Stadium. They have a little, very carefully selected crowd, but of course security is number one. First visit, I believe, of a pontiff since 9/11, right?
Indeed. Gary, your thoughts on the Moody's saying that they're considering this move, certainly, that they may cut Delta and Northwest Airlines. What does that mean for anybody who owns the stock?
Well, look, these stocks have been in free fall because their major fixed cost just keeps going up, and that is oil prices. I got to tell you, I'm going to Hawaii in the summer. I was flying Aloha Airlines, Inter-Island. They go bankrupt. I was flying ATA Airlines from California. They go bankrupt.
Wow.
I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. I may have to swim over to Hawaii.
What are you, the character in Snoopy's that has the gray cloud over its head? Who is that?
It sure looks that way, I'll tell you.
Yeah, the one with all syllables.
Oh, no, you're talking about Pigpen.
Pigpen.
Pigpen. That's another. Victoria, the question of whether we're going to see a lot more of these mergers has come up. I mean, we have so many potential mergers in the works, particularly with the airlines. And the question is, what do they hope to get out of it, except perhaps driving prices higher of the tickets?
Well, that's exactly it. With more consolidation, consumers are going to have less choice, and prices are going to go up. You know, to Peter's point, Americans can afford to fly. Give me a break. What has changed this industry, a lot of it is technology related. You can price compare like you couldn't a couple of years ago, and that's what's driving this industry in really a commodity business. It's not like the peanuts taste different on one airline or another.
They can afford it based on the fares today, although a lot of people are probably putting their airfares on their credit cards, which means they can't afford it. But if they had to raise prices so that the airlines can turn a profit, many Americans who are now flying would not be doing it because it would be too expensive. And that's what's going to happen. It's a natural consequence of a falling standard of living.
Go ahead, Gary.
The sad outcome of all this is more consolidations. That means more people are going to lose their job. That's what's going to happen if the Delta Northwest deal gets done. I will tell you, in the last week, AirTran, the stock was imploding. People were thinking they had a liquidity crisis problem. I think there's going to be a lot more going forward. Other airlines going out of business, no doubt in my mind.
Victoria, do you have the same view of the airline industry that Peter does? And Peter says that we will see less capacity. That means fewer flights, more expensive fares, fewer Americans flying, because that we start to see the price rise.
Yeah, I think it gets worse even now, which is really a statement for someone who flies pretty regularly. Fewer options of where you want to go, even more packed planes right now. Planes are pretty packed. Unfortunately, this is a trend where it's bad for the industry and it's bad for consumers. It's a lose-lose.
Well, but there's a little bit of a blowback, Peter, which is the fact that the less oil and gas we use as a nation, and we presume this is going to happen worldwide, that means that the potential of a glut emerging on the world oil market will come up again.
Well, I don't think so, because
it's happened before.
Well, the oil that we don't use is going to be consumed by other people. You're going to see an explosion.
Not at any price.
Oh, no. Because as our currency goes down and other currencies go up, imagine when the Chinese finally really allow their currency to appreciate. Imagine 1 billion people all over China are flying around in airplanes. I mean, think about all the jet fuel that they're going to use in China when they let their currency go up.
Not if we're not buying the Chinese products because we have a recession.
No, they buy their own products. You see, when their currency goes up, they can afford to buy the products. They don't need us. We're out in the cold. We're left with worthless money and no products.
Oh, we're just worthless here.
We don't. That's
we're
another
just
point.
Worthless
Is that
and
we do have
here.
companies, and Victoria will attest to this. A lot of them are out in Silicon Valley that are producing things, that are inventing things that the whole world is trying to copy and do in a way that we alone can do.
Yeah, no, we do produce some things, and more of what we produce is going to be exported. But unfortunately, we're running a $60 billion a month trade deficit.
And we're still attracting the best talent. You know, I meet with Silicon Valley companies every day, and they are attracting the best and the brightest from around the globe. That's an argument for a relaxation of our visa standards, because that's what's going to hold us alive in the next 20 years. That's the long-term play we need to make.
You know, we morphed over to that discussion from the airlines. I'd like to point out that the Pope is flying, is that Alitalia? Which is really struggling financially. And the first thing the new Prime Minister of Italy, Silvio Berlusconi, says he wants to deal with is the problem with Alitalia to make sure that it continues to fly. I want to stick up for the airlines for a second while everybody's beating them down. We flew to Delta to Utah, and everybody was so very nice and supportive. I think that the people who work for these airlines are also beaten down. They're trying very hard. Jeff Flock has been showing us the pilots of AMR who care passionately about this. Gary Kay, are you crying yet?
Did you get anything to eat?
Come on.
No, wait a minute, hold on. The people at the airlines are fabulous. The employees are terrific.
Yes.
I fly all the time. The system is the problem, and oil prices is the problem at this point in time. I think the bigger problems always come from the higher-ups in management, the ones who make the decision that you should sit on the tarmac for 8 hours and while you can't go to the bathroom. Unfortunately, that's where all the decisions being made. But the people you fly with, the people you meet in the airports, I think they're terrific.
Okay,
they want to do a good job, and they want to service you well.
By the way, let's just take a moment to note, if we can, it doesn't have much business relevance at this point, but that is the Pope's plane, and they have stuck out a couple of flags there. I believe that's the papal flag on the right and, of course, the U.S. flag on the left. So there is some good news to report on this historic day, the first time a Pope has landed at Andrews Air Force Base, and the first time a Pope has been here since 9/11. And, of course, one of the places the Pope is going to visit is the 9/11 site here in New York.
And that's one more Alitalia flight that got to its destination.
Yeah.
See, but they got to pay for their jet fuel with euros, so it wasn't nearly as expensive.
We knew it was coming.
Enough already.